King's Quest. The King's Quest is like the King's Law, hard and fast.
Doing Futurama jokes now, are we?
Well, like it was a new thing. Favorite dialogue of the game.
Yeah.
Clap report.
Clap for clap for.
It's a good friend of ours did the dialogues for this one.
Which, handily enough, brings on to a question. What languages were you inspired by when you created the Magicka language?
Icelandic, mostly. Yeah. Which is closest to ancient Norse.
Well, initially, yeah, but I think it turned out to be a mix of Swedish and strange American accents here and there, depending on what character we were trying to portray. I don't think the Icelanders or whatever.
We added.
The Fornskoger. Yeah, all of the names are very like Old Norse style, but I mean the language. I'm not sure.
It's the best.
Oh, no animation. They were supposed to have a laughing animation, but I didn't have the time to do it.
The Minesweepers. We're referencing Minesweepers in our game.
Yeah. It's a good game.
I hope we're able to get a chance to see.
No, it comes later.
It's later.
I seriously, have anyone gotten that reference, the Minesweepers?
I don't think anyone's ever gotten that reference. It's far too subtle.
But it's kind of
because we have
Yeah.
the second half of the game. All the levels are references to other games. The first 6 levels are references to obviously Star Wars movies. The other half is they are references to different games like Return to Castle Alderheim, Return to Castle Wolfenstein, and the Minesweepers. Well, Minesweepers is one of the oldest games on the Windows system. And we have Symphony of the Twilight. You have to figure that one out yourself. So
that's tough.
if you like vampires, both the sparkling ones and the regular ones.
Yeah, in fact, you were playing that earlier. One of you was, certainly. We were watching you play Symphony of the Night on the office.
Oh yeah, that was me.
Yeah. Vitally important. That's the reason you have the television in the office, is to play Castlevania.
Yeah. I was kind of sad to see, actually, that they had named the level Symphony of the Twilight, but it was hilarious at the same time. I mean, let Twilight into the Symphony of the Night. That's kind of... It's kind of heresy
horrific when you think about it, but
yeah.
It's acceptable. Plenty of questions to get through, so
we actually had
yeah. Bring them on.
We'll see what we can do. So this is an interesting one. Obviously, you can't really talk about whether you would, when and if you will do it, but we can speculate. Would there be, would you like to use or expand on the Magicka battle system in an entirely separate game, something like maybe an MMO, if you were able to and had the time?
Wow, that's really an interesting question. I mean, of course, we would like to do more with this concept, but I think I would have to ask Johan about that, Mr. Bigwig. He's actually coming back right now from the bathroom, not to break his cover.
So
no, he was here all the time.
I was here all the time.
Yeah,
and I'm decidedly not a vampire.
So the question was, would we like to expand on this concept, like in MMO, like this concept of the spell casting, putting elements together and all that?
Oh, of course. I mean, that's one of the parts that sequel's gonna be about. The spellcasting system isn't that elaborate compared to what it could have been if we had the resources to do it from the beginning. I mean, just more interaction with the environment is one of the things that we are sort of lacking in the original game, and that's one of the decisions we had early on, is that, well, we can't do that many interactions with the levels because that's going to we don't have the manpower to do that. And well, just looking into upcoming titles and possibly different like side ideas for Magicka, there's definitely room for doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, all these DLCs that we are planning really give us room to experiment with using this magic system in different scenarios, which could ultimately lead to spin-offs and stuff like that. So we don't. I mean, this is really an experimental phase for us, seeing what we can do with the concept, and we really like to play around with it.
Yeah, you'd mentioned earlier in the day that you were also talking about the way that the magic system could have been more elaborate, and you did mention something. Johan wasn't there. I believe we were actually talking about this at dinner. The idea that at the start, when you first started off with the magic system, it wasn't actually based on button presses. It was based on various gestures.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one thing that has been more casual oriented, and that we've made the spell system a lot more casual by just doing button presses instead of actually having these intricate gestures. And in the end, I think it makes for a more action-packed, fun, crazy game instead of like the sort of tower defense-ish original game.
Yeah.
Where you actually had to stand still to be able to conjure and cast spells.
Yeah, all the enemies were faster than you, and you were really like trying to conjure up the right elements in time before they reach you. And we had to choose between making a game that was more like on the difficult side of casting spells, like creating your own, weaving really, really, really powerful nuke spells, standing like rooted in the same place. Or just having a game where you can fling lots of spells around, and we really choose the way of casting a lot of spells, because a lot of things happening on the screen are more fun to play, I think, for a wider audience at least, and more fun for us at the moment, I think, when we made the decision.
But one of the things that I really would love to do is revisit the original Magicka game. I don't know in which medium or in which way, but
yeah, it really has its upsides.
Make people understand how Magicka looked in its pure form, in its founding principles, if you will.
Yeah, because the original idea was for to create an experience where you felt like you were weaving your spells together, and no one spell were easy to make, easy to cast. You really had to know what you were doing. If you just button mashed, you would end up with nothing, or like setting yourself on fire, which is still easy to do here.
But it was impossible.
Yeah, we had
not to do.
Exactly. We had one gesture for self, we had one gesture for area, and you had to do these to be able to do
the spell
anything.
bar was, I think, 15 elements.
I think 12 was the maximum.
12 was the most,
Yeah,
I believe. Yeah.
So you could stack like 4 area, 4 fire, and 4 push, which was also an element at the time, and that would create a fire projectile, which would hurl through the air, and when it hit something, it would explode. And 4 in area, that would result in a fairly big explosion covering most parts of the screen. And if you were to do like 8 area and 4 fire, that would just nuke the whole screen.
It would end up with some really hilarious scenarios where you have 1 push and 5 area and a lot of fire, and you realize that push won't get the fireball far away enough from you
to not kill you.
Yeah, so and then the combination for water itself was like really hard to do. So you stand there and you know you're going to die. You just have to let go at the right moment to take as many enemies with you as possible.
And you couldn't cancel elements by conjuring their opposites, because that happened as you cast the spell. So you could combine cold and fire and push, and when you cast a spell, nothing would come out. It would just fizzle.
But it was a lot too hardcore. I mean, it would be fun to revisit, but I think what we ended up with is really not just more accessible, but more fun to just pick up and play with your friends as well.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, I think you'd certainly lack quite a lot of appeal if that system was actually in the game now. I don't even remember an awful lot of games where the gesture system worked very well. I know it was very hyped up for the original Black and White, and in reality, certainly in my experience, it didn't work all that well. So it's a tricky concept. It's a great idea, certainly, but you have to sacrifice certain things in order to make a game that more than 7 people on the planet can successfully play.
Yeah,
it's true. And that's one of the things that we learned from doing Magicka, is that in the beginning when we first started to develop this second iteration of Magicka, we kept the gesture system on the controller and also kept it on the keyboard. Oh, get the crowbar. Mine. But it turned out to be too tricky, and in the end we kept the Tekken-ish style combinations, and we also made it more accessible on the PC by just having the button presses, because combining spells is where the fun's at.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned, sort of back at the start where the planning stages and everything was going on, because I do have someone asking, how exactly did Arrowhead Studios start out? Tell us the story of how Arrowhead was first created.
This is a question that it's one of the most usual questions, next to how did you come up with the language. Funny thing is that people don't want to know about the spell system, how we came up with that. They want to know the other stuff. So anyways, we started the company in, when was it? 2008?
2009.
The company as a company, as a registered company, but
we started the studio, yeah.
The studio started in 2008 in January. So the whole thing started with the Swedish Game Awards team presenting their competition, which is the Swedish Game Awards. It's a competition for independent developers in Sweden to compete in game development. So me and Emil went to the presentation of Swedish Game Awards back in January in 2008, and we sat there listening to the lead designer of Starbreeze, I believe it was, that spoke about
I think so.
different things. And when they announced the competition that you can make you're supposed to make a game and hand it in, and we got these submission deadlines and all that, I sort of clicked, I suppose.
Yeah,
we just decided
we sat next to each other, and just like Johan turned to me and said, "Hey, want to make a game?" And at that time they were halfway through, like the submission period has started, like halfway through the development period for the Swedish Game Awards.
It started back in August, I believe, or something.
And we were just like, that would be awesome, because both of us were really into making games, really wanted to start out somewhere, and it seemed that we converged on a lot of issues when it came to game developing, what it's all about, what it's supposed to be about, what's wrong with games nowadays, all that. So we just felt like
we were like rebel game designers.
Yeah, and that was like, it was so easy to start, because then we had something to aim for. And Johan knew Anton somewhat and said that he's a kick-ass programmer, so let's just recruit him, and he was very quick to join.
My fingers were itching to get my hands on a game project, because I was studying my second year then, so we had basically just started making simple games, and I was like, I want to take this further, I want to do more. And they just came and asked me if I wanted to join their project for Swedish Game Awards, and I was like, hell yeah.
And that's basically how the company started. So we gathered up a couple of guys and girls, and thought, what are we gonna do? We're gonna make a game. And Emil said, let's make a wizard game. And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. What if...
Did we lose Graham?
What if I lost Graham?
What if we could just have a game where you as wizard could conjure any elements and just put them into spells?
Where we could just like throw the concept of mana down the drain completely, because we're so sick of that, because it's like the default feature of any spellcasting game.
Yeah, or games which aren't supposed to have mana. For example,
Knights of the Old Republic.
Forced Unleash.
Forced Release. Oh, sorry.
Forced Release. Oh yeah.
The idea of limited force power in that way is hilarious, and so very silly, and contrary to how Star Wars mythos is supposed to work. That it would just run out after a couple of spells.
Yeah, and the game doesn't need it. They could have balanced it so well in other ways, but they decided to go with somehow they decided on the mainstream idea of a mana bar.
Oh well.
But the thing was, when we started out, then we had my idea, my vision was more of the kind of that you have a spell tree where you like conjure runes and choose your way through the spell tree each time you want to cast a spell. So easy spells are like very far down the tree or like very far up where you start out. So you can just like cast a fireball very easily. And if you want to make a firestorm, you have to go further down the tree and conjure several runes to weave your spell together. And then Johan, who knows some programming, said to me, let's just make it fully dynamic. We can combine any element we want to create any spell we want. And I was like, can you do that? I've never seen that in a game. I don't think you can do that. And I was like, yeah, you can do that. Of course you can. And I was like, why haven't anyone done that before?
It's because they don't have the brains.
Yeah, and that's when I realized that you can do pretty much anything with games. It's just that
People default.
yeah, people default.
They go into default setting. So we're gonna make a role-playing game. So let's add hit points. Let's add mana. Let's add skills. Let's
Experience
add
bars.
Yeah, and experience
Instead
bars.
of going
No.
from scratch, let's just do
You
it
don't have
all.
to say I'm gonna make a role-playing game and do a role-playing game.
Längst till vänster.
You have to just say I want to make a game that's about whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, look at Magicka. It's not. I mean, the innovation in Magicka is not mind-blowing. I mean, this is fairly reachable stuff. You have like
No.
wizards and staffs and swords and stuff. And the only thing about it is that you have this spell system that is very free flow. You can do pretty much anything you want, but that doesn't mean that it's easy. That doesn't mean that just because you can throw however many spells you want makes it easy. The lack of a mana bar doesn't at all
Let's just teleport to the right.
lower the difficulty.
So one of the things that people have kept saying during the development of Magicka is that you guys really need to either make it so that you don't start with all the spells, with all the elements, or that there's a lot of those things going on especially from people that know the industry. They were saying that you can't just let everybody have all the spells immediately. You have to have like a curve that during the entire span of the game you unlock new elements, because that's the way it should be done, because it's not fun otherwise.
Yeah, and have a last used spell button that will cast the spell you cast last instantly or something like that.
Yeah. Or just saving your favorite spells to keys so you could just cast them instantly. And there's a lot of people saying those things, and they are like professionals within the gaming industry.
Where are you going?
Where were you going?
Apparently.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to have the courage to just do otherwise. Do the things that you think will be best for your game, and of course listen to people playing it. I mean, that's a given. But I mean, don't assume that people know what they're talking about if they haven't tried out your system yet.
Yeah, I think the whole unlock abilities as you go through the game is such an industry standard that it is starting to get incredibly boring. And that's really a problem I've got with maybe almost all spectacle fighters, actually. Things like the Devil May Cry games, Bayonetta, God of War, etc., etc. Any game remotely like that is exactly the same in the way that it works, in the way that you unlock your new weapons and you unlock your new skills as you go along, and maybe there's a red orb system or something like that which allows you to unlock new moves, and every game does that. It's so incredibly common that it's kind of refreshing to see a game that doesn't require you to do that and doesn't hold your hand through it. It's like, here is a new element, I'm going to show you how to use it for 30 minutes straight, and I'm going to then contrive a bunch of encounters into the game where that element will be useful, in the same way that you'll unlock an ability in a game and it will do exactly the same thing. And I don't know, I find that jarring now as a gamer.
Couldn't agree
I
more.
actually want more freedom in my games from the start.
I think that's one of the things that we've got a lot of good response on this freedom you have from the start, and the fact that the game is hard in places. I mean, it's just, it doesn't hold your hand all the way. And of course, people
Does
are
it ever?
No, I don't think so. I think the tutorial is at most.
Blood is helpful.
Yeah, but of course you're gonna have people complaining about that, but also a lot of people have been waiting for a game to do that, to just like, here, have a controller, do whatever you want.
What you want.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably one of the reasons why Minecraft is so successful. It's that game doesn't hold your hand at all, and it lets you create pretty much anything from the start. Hell, you might not be able to create it in an amazing material or whatever, but hey, you can dig a bunch of dirt and make a castle a mile high if you want, and you can do that from the very start with just a very basic item, and that's been incredibly successful. And you can also look at sandboxes like Garry's Mod and things like that. People are looking for more freedom because a lot of games these days are very much on rails.
Yeah.
And not just in the way that there's only a linear path through the level. The whole experience is on rails. The speed at which you get your abilities is on rails. The encounters are designed at any particular time around you having specific abilities. And if you didn't have them, the encounters wouldn't work because that's how contrived they are.
Yeah, and that's just boring in every aspect possible. I had something on my brain. It might have been a slug, or an idea, or a thought.
You had
But I
something in
lost
your
it.
brain, but now it's gone.
Yes.
So how much have you had to drink?
Not that much.
Not
actually.
nearly enough.
No, you had way more last night, as I recall. You probably
Let's
don't
not speak about those events.
recall. Swedes like to drink, so I was told.
Swedes like to drink. Swedes don't like to talk about it after.
So, no.
Let's move on. Right.
Anyway,
Oh, in this
we're in a
movie.
cave.
Bad taste. We're 2/3 through the game, and we got 250 kills for the bad taste achievement.
Oh dear.
That's, you gotta give more stuff.
It's we've just lost the streaming again.
Why is that?
Streaming computer
God.
crashed.
Oh, crap. Another boss fight.
Yeah, just that's an interesting one.
Is
Transition.
happening for a lot of buses.
Yes.
At least 2.
Weird.
Lost the connection there. Well, we'll have to go through it. This particular boss, without you being able to see it on the live stream. It will be seen on the VODs because the computer it's being recorded on is not, in fact, the streaming machine. We'll get the streaming machine reconfigured and we can re-host the game after that actually happens. But yeah, I can ask you a couple more questions actually while you're doing that, and we can get the streamer reconfigured and back online as quickly as possible. I will not find you questions about bugs. Let's see what else have we got here. That's an interesting one from a programming perspective. Inhuman asks, how did you create a physics system that appears to work as well as it does? Especially pushes of any sort appear extremely realistic.
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Basically, he's asking how you created what he thinks is such a well-formed physics system within the game, and particularly when you push something, or when you've sent something flying or whatever, he perceives it as either very realistic. I personally perceive it as often very much exaggerated.
Yeah, part of what we did to get that exaggerated feeling and the action pace into it is we use twice the gravity that's standard for games, so things fall through the sky a lot faster than they really should.
Or than they usually do in other games.
Yeah, or reality.
All right.
Yeah, let's not say should. You should not unlock the elements at the start of the game.
Yeah, right.
To everybody else.
But it's interesting because I've never heard that approach. I mean, that's like, wow. If it's perceived as realistic or good in any way, I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
It's a rewrite basically, isn't it, of an existing physics engine?
No, we're actually using an engine called Jiglib X, which is a port of the Jiglib engine. I don't know if we should go into detail of how much we've had to change that.
the XNA certainly has its ups and downs and limitations.
See what else we have in terms of questions. I think you've just about beaten this particular encounter, and then we can get the server set up and get back on the streaming. Those of you watching the VODs, you might be wondering, well, what? Nothing's going wrong. Oh, yes. You may have also noticed that one of the players actually disconnected. That is the problem at the moment. Let's see what we have here.
Oh.
Oh, that's an easy one. So, are there any plans at some point in the future to implement magic combinations for co-op play, such as summons or heavy AoE spells that require multiple players to combine elements in such a way that it does something you couldn't do on your own?
I actually wanted that in from the start, but we didn't really. We were cowards. We wanted we wanted players to be able to explore all of the spell content on their own.
On their own, yeah.
Not to miss out on powerful, like, imbalanced combinations because you're two. You know, if you're one, you miss out on all those great combinations. But I think that would be a great asset. It doesn't have to be like, you know, a win-all kind of magic. It could be hard to coordinate. It could be very useful in very certain situations. So.
The health bar is still up.
So yeah, we really want to do that, and we have had some thoughts on it from the start. So hopefully we'll be able to do something with that. But I mean, as with everything, we can't really promise anything since Johan talks so very freely about a sequel. I guess I can mention it as well. But